Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good evening, everybody. I am joining you from Britain, and it is already evening in England. Welcome to Risale-i Nur lecture series. It was an important project we've been working on for quite a while, and this is our very first meeting. So the idea is to have a schedule of lessons or lectures over 10 months where we go through certain topics from Bediüzzaman Said Nursi's Risale-i Nur. It's going to be a text-based study. We are going to be reading some of his writings, and I will try to elaborate on his arguments. This is the initial intention, initial plan. Each lesson will be about 40 minutes. And at any point, if you like to ask a question rather than interrupting the flow of the talk, if you can post your questions through chat, I'll be taking a look occasionally and try to address those questions ideally at the end of the lesson. So as I said, I am planning to keep it within 40 minutes, plus a couple of minutes for Q&A, the questions that are posted through Zoom chat. If there isn't any questions, I can give you 5 minutes back. Probably we haven't met before, or you have seen me before, but for the ones who haven't seen me before, I'd like to introduce myself briefly. You might be asking yourself, why are we listening to this guy? Who is this man? I'll start introducing myself, then we're gonna introduce the main person, which is Nursi himself. First, about me. My name is Hakan. I work at Leeds Beckett University in Britain. I identify myself, not that type of identification. I identify myself as a scientist, philosopher. Why do I do that? I'm a physicist by trade. I studied physics and engineering, and I used to teach physics in English schools. This is many, many years ago. I didn't have any formal theological education. I went through technical schools, engineering schools. I studied physics, etc. And I was teaching science and physics in English schools. People look at my name, they say, this guy is not English. Although I look a bit white, once I start talking, you can pick up from the accent and say, oh, this guy is not English. And obviously, this is happening like early 2000, like 20, 25 years ago. Uh, I go to my class, lots of students come in, and I try to teach physics, and the conversation just evolves. And people say, oh, sir, where are you original from? Your name sounds different. I tell them I'm Turkish. And naturally, things end up coming to Islam because people are curious. They want to know what we believe, what we practice, etc. Especially once they see you don't smoke or drink or, do certain things that average uh, Western person does. They naturally ask questions like that. So obvious, I tell them, yeah, I'm a Muslim. And they start a flood of questions. And the next big one is God question. In philosophy, we have a list of all-time top questions. One is there a God? Another one, what happens when we die? Another one, is there a purpose? Why are we here? And few others. So then I realized I teach the subject of physics, then I end up talking to my students about, you know, metaphysical subjects, topics. So I teach physics, but I deal with a lot of metaphysics. In ancient Greece, metaphysics was a branch of science. So people didn't call it religion or theology, but it was metaphysics. So I was also interested because the more I kept getting these questions, the more I went into researching, and I was, very motivated, very excited, and I was at an age where I thought, maybe I should do something more beneficial with my life from this point onward. Then I went to Professor Colin Turner. Probably you've heard of him. He's a famous person living in Durham, and he's a famous Nursi expert. I hadn't met him before, and at that point in my life, I submitted a PhD proposal at Sheffield University to study satellite technologies. As a physicist, satellite technologies, GPS, etc. These were quite hot topics at that time. So a good friend of mine, he said, why don't you just do something different? Why do you keep insisting on studying science and physics? And he says, besides, what is the point of studying GPS and satellites? Probably you're gonna develop weapons to kill people. That was something I hadn't thought of. It was true because at that time, when you say GPS, global positioning systems, and satellites, it was mainly military thing. And so I came back with these reflections. Should I go for PhD in physics, do GPS and satellites and stuff? And he said, why don't you just go to Colin Turner, have a chat with him, and do something focusing on Risale-i Nur? Because Colin Turner is an expert and he's open for taking up new PhD students. Anyway, I rang him up and he invited me to his house. So I drove up to Durham. I went to his house. I said, I'm a physicist, I'm teaching science in schools, but these are the questions I keep getting, and I know Nursi wrote about this kind of stuff. And I'm really interested in doing my PhD on Risale-i Nur. Professor Turner was very excited because up until that point, he'd had, you know, theology students, philosophy students, people with some religious backgrounds. So for the first time, he had a scientist coming in and, inquiring about Risale-i Nur. He was very excited, very happy. And he said, so what exactly you want to study? I said, well, these are the questions I'm facing all the time. I think the good one should be the existence of God. Does God exist? What makes more sense? Atheism, which was popular back then. These days, it's not very popular, atheism. And is atheism sound or is it flawed? Is theism a stronger argument? And how does Nursi see these things? And how does he argue for the existence of God? And Professor Turner liked the idea. He said, all right, go ahead, write a proposal. I'm going to take you on board. So that's how my Risale-i Nur journey at an academic level started. Obviously, I had my first piece of Risale-i Nur given to me back in 1986 or 87. The Guide to the Youth, Gençlik Rehberi. That was the first Risale. It was pocket size. So I had already known Risale-i Nur and I really enjoyed it. But it was the beginning of my official expedition into Risale-i Nur. Anyway, fast forward, I did my PhD at Durham University. Then I went into teaching the subject and delivering lectures, joining to events, etc., publishing few books. And these days, because Risale-i Nur at an academic level is quite niche. So if you look for someone with a PhD in physics, you Google it, you have tons of people. But if you Google people with PhD in Risale-i Nur studies, you can have only a handful. I thought, that makes me quite rare. So you don't find people like me a lot. So that's why when I introduced myself, I said I'm a physicist and philosopher because by trade I'm a scientist and by academic interest over the last couple of decades, I've been studying and writing about Risale-i Nur and talking about Risale-i Nur. So I have been delivering lectures in English for the last probably 15 years, especially to the audience in the US. So if you are watching this from the US, probably you've seen me already. So after COVID, things have changed, and we had this opportunity of setting up channels, delivering lectures, and making the digital assets accessible to everybody. As a person, I am always in the mindset of a student. I always think, I'm not good enough. I should carry on learning. Okay, you should do that. But at the same time, you should disperse your knowledge. Surely you know slightly more than other people. Anyway, out of curiosity, I keep searching. I said, right, what's out there? What new stuff can I learn about Risale-i Nur? Then I realized there isn't much digital materials online. So we decided to have this series broadcast live on Elegance TV and publish it later on the YouTube channel. And I thought, yeah, why not? Because in academia, there is this slogan. It says, publish or perish. The idea is this: whatever you have accumulated in terms of knowledge, you have to publish it, you have to show it to the world. I mean, this expression is usually used for academic paper publishing or book publishing, but I think it also applies this type of digital uh, media. I mean, there is no point reading, learning a lot, accumulating lots of stuff, and just keeping them for yourself. No, just go ahead and put it out there in case someone benefits from it. And more importantly, this is also what I put in the introduction of the book, if I can. I don't want to plug the product, so this is the book I publish. It's just, selected readings from Risale-i Nur. And I knew there were a lot of reactions. And I wrote at the introduction, well, on the back jacket actually, I said, look, I have worked on this, and the idea is not me being an important or interesting person. Nursi is the important and interesting person. And my aim in this book and in these videos is to promote Nursi and his work and encourage people. Okay, you heard what I said. Go ahead and deep dive and do your own research, do your own reading, do your own exploration. So basically, I just want to be a stepping stone for people so that they can step on me and jump to the other side and read Risale-i Nur itself. I'm going to be sharing some screens because most of the stuff is open source. So I will start off with the material I'll be using. So this is a website I have been a big fan of, especially if you are doing a lot of, mobile and online activities. I'll just zoom out a bit so that you can see what is this page about. This is called e-Risale. And on the left-hand side, you see 5 books. I zoom in. You can actually see the book logo. So these are the 5 main writings of Nursi. Is that it? It is not. But as an English-speaking audience, we are a bit disadvantaged on that because if you go to the original page, which is in Turkish, because Nursi lived in Turkey. If you are really, really new, uh, he lived in Turkey from 1887 or 6 and died in 1960. And geographically, he lived in Turkey. It was called Ottoman Empire in the first half of his life. But geographically, he lived in Turkey. And he wrote in Turkish mainly and some books in Arabic. So this page, if you go to Turkish, you see there are a lot more books. So these are the books that are that he has published in his lifetime. Look how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 15, 16 books. But if you choose the language to English, you only see some of them. So if you switch language to English, you can only see 5 books. Don't despair. The topics that we're going to cover in this series will be from these 5 books. And each time I'm going to point at the source of the discussion, and we are going to read the text, and I'm going to try to elaborate the text. As I said, I'm sure you will benefit from, hearing this lesson and, watching the material I'll be showing you. There will be certain benefits, but the ultimate goal is that you do your own reading, you do your own discovery, because I will be nowhere close enough to reflect Risale-i Nur. I'll just be the appetizer. I'll just be the stepping stone. So if you are an old-fashioned person like me, you can grab a book like this, or if you want to see the whole thing, you can have it online, accessible. You can add it to your favorites and start from the first book and just go at your own pace. Now, let's introduce Said Nursi and Risale-i Nur, because so far it's been enough about me and my methodology and my intention. So let's focus on Nursi. I have been delivering lectures for a long, long time. And we don't normally film it. You got, room full of people, and you just go ahead and, talk about Risale-i Nur. One of the first objections I face, because you don't know who's in the audience. You can have atheist people, you can have very secular people, you can have agnostic people, you can have believing people from different religions, you can have Muslims from different sects, because not every Muslim is the same. The first objection usually is, why are you talking about this man? I mean, why Nursi? Why not someone else? Since I kept getting this question on objection, I did a bit of a research. I mean, I knew certain things. So there is this article, and I tend to deliver this if the audience is brand new and if they are a bit familiar with Islamic teachings. I mean, it is also useful for absolute beginner. Something very useful, a good starting point. So there is an article in Wikipedia. So this is accessible. You can just go to Wikipedia and search the term müceddit. So let me just bring it a bit bigger. I usually start off with this article. I don't know who wrote this. Probably it's been edited by so many times by so many people, but it is accessible. It has been in Wikipedia for a long, long time. For those who don't speak much Arabic, don't despair. We're going to break it down and make it digestible. The word tejdid in Arabic literally translates as renewal. So this is tejdid. So it's in Arabic here, this one, and this is tejdid, which means renewal. And the person who does the job is called müceddid, the person who renews. But I tend to use the word teacher instead of müceddid because it sits in better, especially with young audience. So what is the context of this term? As you already know, or as you don't know, there are two main sources of Islamic faith system. The first one is the Holy Book. As Christians do have Bibles, Muslims have the Quran. So that is the first and the top source of Islam. The second source is a collection of books. We call them books of traditions. In Arabic, kutub ahadith. What does that mean? Okay, the Quran is about 600 pages and it is a guidance for everybody on this planet. But when you go into small details, you need explanation. For example, Quran says, do this good deed, but you don't know where does that good deed start, what is the best value, where does it end, what is the gray area. So for this, you need additional explanation. That's why the second main source of Islam is the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. When he was alive, Quran was being revealed over 20 odd years. Since he was there, he answered questions to his friends. So people said, Ya Rasulullah, Quran says this. What about this little detail? So the Prophet ﷺ elaborated on lots of topics. And his words have had been kept by people. So people memorize what the Prophet said. Once the Prophet passed away, scholars started thinking, we have a lot of traditions that the Prophet left behind, but they are not recorded properly. Quran is being recorded, it's a book. But the sayings of the Prophet, it is like word of mouth. People just report. He says, I heard from Sayyidina Ali, the Prophet said to Aisha this and that. So it's an oral tradition. And scholars like Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, etc. Probably you have heard of these people. They are big scholars. They collected authentic sayings of the Prophet and they published them. So we have got good collection of the Prophet's explanations and sayings. So the most famous one is Bukhari and Muslim. Probably, I'm sure you have heard of these two guys. Bukhari was from Uzbekistan, from Bukhara. That's why people usually used to be called with where they came from. So this scholar was originally from Bukhara. That's why they call him Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, etc. So in addition to the Quran, now we got additional literature. And one of the hadith that is the saying of the Prophet is this. So this is in Sunan Abu Dawud, book 37, Kitab-ı Melahim. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said, Allah will raise for this community, Muslim community, ummah, or in general, for humanity. Allah will raise for this community at the end of every 100 years the one who will renovate its religion for it. So in plain English, the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm the last prophet. When I'm gone, you're going to have no more prophets. Khatamun Nabiyyun, the seal of the prophets. He says, after me, there is going to be no Rasul, no Nabi. I'm the last one. After me, until day of judgment, Yawmul Qiyamah, there is going to be no prophets. But what about people? How will they find their ways around? He said, someone every 100 years will come and teach you the religion I taught you. So we call this person the teacher of the century. In plain English, the teacher of the century. If you are interested in Arabic and Islamic literature, probably you are interested. This person is called Mujaddid. Plural, this singular, Mujaddid. Teacher of the century. When I'm reading this, like you guys, I'm just reading this article, Mujaddid. Okay, there is hadith. I always, because I'm an academic and a scientist, I always question stuff. I said, right, let me just go find this book, Sunan Abu Dawud, and actually find, and I read it in Arabic. Indeed, it is there. Prophet ﷺ indeed said this. He said, I'm going, but you're going to get a teacher every 100 years. Now this is getting exciting. I thought, right, so who are these teachers? So I carry on. As I said, Islam is not one entity. You got Sunni, you got Shia, you got Wahhabi, you got different sects within different uh, groups. And there are also geographical diversion. You got Indian subcontinent, you got Africa, you got the Middle East, etc. You got different geographies. Since everybody agrees on this hadith, he says, now let's identify who these teachers are. In most cases, there is the agreement, unanimous agreement. They say, okay, so this person is Mujaddid. He's the teacher of that century. But in some centuries, people say, oh, it could be that person or that person. And although the Prophet ﷺ said this about in the sense of scholarly renewal, some people thought, there has been some political turmoils in Islamic lands. So maybe we should consider some of the political leaders as Mujaddid as well. So this article lists them all. But our main focus is Bediüzzaman Said Nursi because the whole lecture series is about reading and understanding him. So this one is the claimants. So who are the first century? Remember, when we say we live in the West, this is year 2024, but it is Gregorian calendar. The calendar we are using now started at year zero. And what happened in year zero? Jesus, alayhi salam, was born. So the Christian said, right, this is the start of our calendar. It's been 2024. But Muslims, they said, our calendar shouldn't start with Christian calendar. Our calendar should start with the date in which the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Al-Medina. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ was born in 571 Christian calendar year. 571. And he passed 632. And he migrated from Mecca to Al-Medina. That year is the start of Islamic calendar. You know, some of the stuff I like explaining to people because you sometimes you assume everybody should know this. So if you already know this, uh, don't complain because I assume, because I don't see the audience. I don't know who's going to be watching this lesson. I don't know who's going to be watching the video. That's why I have to lay the foundations to tell the difference between Christian calendar and Muslim calendar. For example, for Christian calendar, it's 2024 this year. And if you're an iPhone user, if you wake your phone, it shows you, what does it say? Okay, so you can actually add, okay, it says, look, 1446 AH. It says 26 Rab 1446 AH. Let me wake. You can actually add this to your iPhone. So this is year 1446 AH, which is short for after Hijrah. Hijrah means migration from Mecca to Al-Medina. So for Muslims, this is the 15th century. For Christians, it is the 21st century. Now, based on that hadith I showed you earlier, Prophet said you should have one teacher every century. So theoretically, we should have 15 teachers for each century. So let's look at the first one. This is obviously Christian calendar. The first one, everybody agrees, is Umar ibn Abdulaziz. And second century, Imam Shafi or Ahmed ibn Hanbal. These are the two, there are four schools of thoughts in Sunni Islam. You've got Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, Maliki. Probably you know all these. So the common consensus is Imam Shafi and Ahmed ibn Hanbal, they were the teachers of the second century. The third century, Muhammad Bukhari or Ash'ari. Fourth century, again, Nishaburi or Bakilani. Fifth century, Imam Ghazali. Probably you know Ghazali because they made film about him. So, or Abdul Qadir Geylani. Their influence is still on. So these are potential teachers of that century. Sixth century, you have like Fahrettin Razi or Salahaddin Ayyubi. He was a commander, but they still put him in the list of potential Mujaddid. Seventh century, eighth century, 9, 10, Imam Rabbani is here. This is Ahmed Sirindi. This is Imam Rabbani. 11th century, 12 and 13 and 14. This is the last century, and this is what we are interested in. So, according to this article, there are some potential candidates. So, the teachers could be one of these. And not surprisingly, Bediüzzaman is in the list. And he says, potentially, I mean, for us, for Risale-i Nur audience, he is the Mujaddid, he is the renewer. But it is very satisfying to see that there was a consensus in on the internet when it comes to Wikipedia article. He says, right, Said Nursi, also nicknamed Bediüzzaman. Zaman means time. Bediüzzaman means non-peril of the time. There is nothing like him. Very unique. So Bediüzzaman is an honorary title that was given, or Üstad, the master. So if you go to school or college, you got your teacher. The top teacher is called Üstad. So also his nickname is Üstad. And he is there. So that brings us to Risale-i Nur. And okay, so he's been officially recognized in the world. Not everybody says, okay, he's the one, we're gonna follow him. But for us, definitely there is an added value. So let's focus on what he does and what he tells. So today, obviously, I'm not gonna pick up any of his writings. It's gonna be our next lesson. We're gonna look at his chapter from the words. We're going to read the chapters together. We're going to look at his style, his arguments, and the topic of the next lesson will be the purpose of existence and the universe. Is it just by chance, random celestial explosions and earthly evolutions, and we just ended up here as, supreme evolved animal who can speak? That's one version. Or is there something planned behind this? So we're going to look at Bediüzzaman Said Nursi's explanation, and it's going to be our very first reading chapter. That's going to be our next lesson. But I want to focus on one thing. Nursi was a very clever person. He was into learning and teaching at a young age. And he was also writing starting from 1910. So if we look at the chronology of his writings, we see one of his earliest writings was 1909, 1910. Considering the fact that he was born in 1877, 1910, how old was he in 1910? 87, yeah, 31, 32, fairly young person. So he was a very good, very effective speaker and writer. And he was also interacting with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He went to Mehmet Reşat with projects, etc. He didn't get on very well with Abdülhamit II, who sent him to the mental asylum. He says, this man must be mad. Because Nursi was, so brilliant. When he explained his ideas, people thought a bit like Elon Musk. You think this man is either genius or crazy because there is nothing in between. So Abdülhamit II, he thought Nursi was crazy and he sent him to asylum, mental hospitals. It's just go there. But something very dramatic happened in 1914. That is the First World War. I'll just show you something on Google Maps because Google Maps always goes down quite well with audience. So let me just duplicate this and the meeting is being sent to third party. Okay, so this to me that was a triggering event. So if I take you to Google Maps, this is what happened to Nursi in during the war. So this is England. This is where I live. Okay, I'll show you something interesting. So this is Turkey, and this is Russia, obviously. If I zoom in, this is the city of Van. So Nursi was fighting to defend the country against Russian invasion. It's a bit of a Hollywood material, but very interesting. Bear with me because things make sense. Whilst fighting the Russians, he got uh, arrested. He became a prisoner of war, POW. So the Russians took him and he said, right, we are going to send you to an exile to a town near Moscow called Kostroma. Let me just find this. I think Kostroma, Russia. There we go. He was taking to this town. Let me just zoom out so that you see where it is. Okay, zooming out. This is Moscow. This is Kostroma. And this is one. So Nursi was taken to Kostroma up here, but he escaped. We don't know the exact journey. He went to St. Petersburg, then he went to Germany, because Germany was the ally of the Ottoman Empire. When they saw this Kurdish Ottoman guy, he said, look, I escaped Russians. They helped him. They gave him documents, passport, and everything, and they sent him to Istanbul. So this is the journey from one north of Moscow, Kostroma, and through Germany, Europe, back to Istanbul. Very interesting journey. This journey was remarkable. We're not going to look into the spiritual aspect of it. We are going to look into what Nursi observed and encountered through this journey. So he realized what was happening in Russia, in Europe. He came to Turkey. He got the medals and honors and everything. Two important things happened. War ended. Russia was run by the Tsar, but collapsed. The communists, the Bolsheviks, took control of Russia. And also Ottoman Empire collapsed. And the new republic, they decided to take French models because France was already very secular. They separated religion, church, and state. And new republic, they thought, let's take European model and let's apply to Turkey. Now it became Turkey. It was Ottoman Empire. Collapse became a new republic, but it was dramatically different, secular. Now Nursi realized, hang on a minute, I thought the war was the problem, but in fact, the new world is the problem because there is communism, there is secularism, there is irreligion, and people rejecting the existence of God, etc. And he said, right, we are going to focus on addressing these issues. Then Risale-i Nur, as we know it, he started writing. 1925 he started and 1950 he finished. So this was a brief introduction because I don't want to exceed the time. I'm just looking in the chat if there is any question. Okay, so this was the brief introduction. And next month, we are going to pick up the real stuff. real Nursi. We're going to read what he says, and you're going to be the judge of his arguments. Does it make sense? You live in the West, you speak English. Does it convince you or not? So next month's topic, with the permission of God, inshallah, is the purpose of existence and purpose of this universe.